I didn't plan to meet her that day. We were just two strangers walking the same direction, both noticing, both hesitating. Then she took my hand and said she'd make the first step, and in that moment, everything I thought I was ready for quietly changed. This is a story about courage, honesty, and the choice that comes after the first step. My name is Brian. I'm 34 years old. I work as an engineer, mostly with infrastructure projects, and I live just outside the city, in a quiet area where weekends usually feel slower than weekdays. I'm not the kind of person who rushes into conversations with strangers. I observe first. I think. Sometimes I think too much. That afternoon, I was walking through the shopping mall without any real plan. I had a short list on my phone, a jacket to return, and time to kill. The mall was busy, but not overwhelming. Families, couples, people scrolling their phones while walking. Normal life. I noticed her near a small cafe on the second floor. She was standing in line, holding her bag with both hands, looking forward, then slightly to the side. When she turned her head, our eyes met for a second longer than usual. Not awkward, just noticeable. I kept walking. A few steps later, I realized she was moving in the same direction. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Malls are like that. Still, I became aware of her presence. The sound of her steps. The way she slowed down near a store window. I glanced again. She was looking at me too, not constantly, but enough that it felt intentional. She looked confident, but there was something thoughtful in her expression. Not a performance, just awareness. I thought about saying something. Anything simple. But the usual questions came up in my head. What if she doesn't want to be bothered? What if I misread it? I've always believed that respect sometimes means stepping back. We passed one store, then another. I assumed this was the moment where we would split paths and forget about each other. I was already preparing to let it go. Then I felt a hand touch mine. It wasn't sudden or aggressive. Just a calm, clear movement. I stopped walking and turned toward her. She was standing close enough to be heard without raising her voice. "I'll take the first step," she said. I didn't pull my hand away. I didn't feel the need to. I was surprised, yes, but also relieved. I smiled, mostly out of reflex, but it felt genuine. "I'm Brian," I said. I guess I was overthinking. She smiled back. I could tell. Her name was Monica. She was 36 and worked as a cosmetologist. She spoke calmly, confidently, without trying to impress me. We stood there for a moment, people passing around us, and talked like the mall had disappeared. We walked together without planning to, just continued in the same direction. We talked about small things at first. Work, how crowded the place was, how neither of us actually enjoyed shopping that much. There was no rush in the conversation, no awkward silence either. It felt easy, like talking to someone you already knew but hadn't met yet. Near the exit, she stopped and looked at her phone. "I should go," she said, "but I'm glad I didn't." "So am I answered. I asked if she wanted to get coffee sometime. Not as a dramatic question, just honest. She nodded without hesitation. We exchanged numbers. When we said goodbye, she didn't let go of my hand immediately. Just a second longer than necessary. Enough to stay in my thoughts. As I walked to my car, I realized something simple but important. If she hadn't done what she did, we would have walked past each other and never known. And that stayed with me all the way home. The next evening, I arrived 5 minutes early and waited outside the cafe we'd agreed on. It wasn't a fancy place, just a warm corner spot with big windows and the kind of lighting that made everyone look a little less tired. I chose it because it felt normal. No pressure. No loud music. Somewhere you could actually hear a person. I kept checking the door like an idiot, pretending I wasn't. When Monica walked in, I recognized her immediately, but I still felt that small jolt in my chest, like my brain was catching up to reality. She took off her coat and looked around until she saw me. When she smiled, it was the same smile from the mall, calm and direct. "Hi," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Hi," I answered. "I'm glad you came." "I was going to," she said, "but I'll admit, I usually don't do things like that. Taking someone's hand in the middle of a mall." I laughed quietly. "I usually don't stand there thinking for 10 minutes about whether I should say hello." "That explains why I had to do it," she said, and her eyes stayed on mine as she said it, like she wasn't teasing me, just stating a fact. We ordered coffee, then something small to eat. The barista called our names, and it felt strangely comforting to hear them said out loud, like this wasn't just a random moment anymore. At first we kept it light. Work, schedules, annoying clients. The kind of conversation people have when they're still deciding whether they like each other or they're just being polite. But even then, the way Monica talked made it feel different. She didn't fill silence with noise. She didn't try to sound more interesting than she was. She asked questions, actually listened to the answers, then asked a little deeper. "So you're an engineer," she said, stirring her coffee slowly. "What does that look like in real life?" Because people say that, and I picture either someone building bridges or someone staring at a screen all day. "It's a little of both," I said. "Mostly planning and problem solving. A lot of emails, meetings, deadlines. But I like it. I like knowing something I worked on will actually be there for years." She nodded like she understood that kind of thinking. "I get that," she said. "With my work, it's different, but also the same. People come in, and they're not just doing their hair or their skin. Sometimes they're trying to feel normal again, or confident again. You can tell when someone's had a rough season." The way she said season made me look at her a little longer. She didn't say it dramatically. She said it like someone who had lived through one. "Do you like it?" I asked. "I do," she answered. "Most days. Some days it's exhausting, because you end up listening to everyone's life while you're trying to do your job. But I still like it. And I like being good at it." I noticed how steady she was. Not in a cold way. In a grounded way. Like she'd learned how to hold herself. We talked about where we lived, what we did when we weren't working, the small things that reveal a person without forcing them to confess their whole life story. She told me she liked early mornings when the world was quiet, and that she hated loud restaurants because she liked hearing what people said. I told her I ran sometimes, not because I loved it, but because it cleared my head. At some point, she looked at me and said, "You're careful." I didn't know whether it was a compliment or an observation. "I am," I admitted. "I don't always love that about myself." "I didn't say it was bad," she said. "I just noticed." Something about her saying it so simply made me relax. It felt like she wasn't trying to figure me out as a puzzle. She was just seeing me. After we finished our coffee, we walked outside. The air was colder than I expected. She pulled her coat tighter, and I offered my scarf without thinking. She hesitated, then took it. "Thank you," she said, wrapping it around her neck. We walked without rushing, staying close enough that our shoulders almost touched. There was a comfort in it that surprised me. I hadn't expected to feel that safe on a first date. Safe isn't the word people usually use, but it was what it felt like. "I have to ask," I said after a moment. "What made you do it?" "Back at the mall." Monica didn't answer right away. She looked ahead, then down at the sidewalk, like she was choosing the honest version. "I'm tired of waiting," she said. Not in a desperate way. Just, I've spent too much time in my life thinking, maybe, later, someday. And then someday never comes. "I saw you looking at me." "I was looking at you. And I thought, if neither of us moves, this becomes another almost." I didn't know what to say to that, because it landed too close to truth. "I respect that," I said. "I think I needed that kind of push." She glanced at me. "Do you feel pushed?" "No," I answered quickly. "Not pushed. More like, I'm glad someone broke the silence." She nodded like that was enough. We reached her car, and she stopped beside it. The streetlights caught her face in a way that made her look softer than she had inside the cafe. She handed my scarf back. "You can keep it for tonight," I said. "I'll give it back," she said. "I'm not a thief." "I didn't mean it like that." "I know," she said, and she smiled again. And for a second it felt like we were standing in the mall all over again, right at that moment where a normal day shifts into something else. Then her expression changed. Not dramatically, just a slight pause, like she remembered something important. "Brian," she said quietly, "there's something I should tell you." My stomach tightened, not because I expected anything terrible, but because I could tell it mattered to her. "Okay," I said. "What is it?" She took a breath. Her hand went to the strap of her bag, gripping it lightly. Not nervous exactly, but careful. "I have a child," she said. "A kid. And I don't want that to be something I hide or bring up later like it's a surprise." For a moment, I didn't respond. Not because I judged her. Not because I didn't like her anymore. It was more like my mind tried to adjust the picture too quickly. "A child," I repeated, mostly to make sure I heard it right. She nodded. "Yes." "How old?" I asked. 8, she answered. "Second grade." My throat felt dry. I tried to keep my face neutral because I didn't want her to see something that looked like rejection if what I felt was just shock. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Really, I appreciate it." Monica's eyes stayed on mine, searching for honesty, not for the perfect reaction. I'm not asking you to be anything, she said. I'm not asking you to step into a role. I just needed you to know who I am. Fully. I nodded slowly. I understand. The truth was, I didn't know what I felt yet. I liked her. I felt drawn to her. But the word child carried weight. Responsibility. A whole world I hadn't been thinking about when we were laughing inside a cafe. I'm not running away, I said, because I could sense she might be bracing for that. I need a second to let that sink in. That's fair, she said, and her voice stayed steady, but I could hear the risk underneath it. The part of her that had taken my hand and chosen courage. The part of her that could still get hurt. We stood there for a moment, not touching, not moving, just being real. I had a good time tonight, she said finally. I did too, I said. More than I expected. She nodded once. Okay. Good night, Brian. Good night, Monica. She got into her car and closed the door. I watched her pull away, then I stood there longer than I should have, hands in my pockets, looking at nothing. On the drive home, my thoughts wouldn't settle. I kept replaying her words. I have a child. I'm tired of waiting. I don't want to hide it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't disappointed. I was conflicted. Because I could already tell this wasn't going to be one of those casual stories where you text for a week and then fade out. Monica wasn't built like that. And if I stayed, it wouldn't just be about me and her. It would be about stepping into something real. And the most honest truth I could admit to myself that night was simple. I wanted her, but I wasn't sure yet if I was ready for everything that came with her. That night, after I got home, I didn't turn on the TV or open my laptop. I dropped my keys on the table, sat on the edge of the couch, and stayed there longer than I planned. The apartment felt unusually quiet. Not lonely, just still. Monica's words kept replaying in my head, not as a warning, but as a fact. I have a child. She hadn't said it to test me or trap me. She said it because she didn't want to build anything on half-truths. That alone told me a lot about her. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking down at the street. Cars passed. People walked their dogs. Life moved forward without asking whether I was ready or not. I tried to be honest with myself. I wasn't scared of a child in the abstract. I was scared of responsibility that wasn't theoretical anymore. Of becoming important to more than one person. Of the possibility that someone could depend on me in a way that wasn't optional. I didn't call her that night. Not because I wanted to disappear. Not because I lost interest. I just knew that if I spoke before I understood my own thoughts, I might say something careless. And Monica didn't deserve that. I went to bed late and slept badly. I woke up more than once, staring at the ceiling, replaying small moments from the evening. The way she stirred her coffee. The way she didn't look away when she told me about her child. The calm courage in her voice. In the morning, I went to work on autopilot. Shower. Coffee. The same route I always took. My colleagues talked about deadlines and meetings, and I nodded at the right moments. But my mind was somewhere else. At lunch, I sat alone and checked my phone more times than I wanted to admit. There was no message from her. I respected that. She hadn't pushed for reassurance. She had given me space, the same way she had given me honesty. That made the silence heavier. By the time the workday ended, I realized something uncomfortable about myself. I wasn't afraid of her situation. I was afraid of making the wrong choice and hurting someone. I'd spent years building a life where my decisions mostly affected only me. That was safe. Predictable, but it was also small. That evening, I went for a run. Not a long one, just enough to clear my head. With each step, the same thought kept coming back. Walking away would be easier, cleaner. I could tell myself it just wasn't the right time. But easy didn't feel right. When I got home, I sat down again, this time with my phone in my hand. I typed a message, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Everything sounded either too distant or too serious. So I put the phone down. I didn't sleep much that night either. In the morning, I woke up early, before my alarm. The apartment was quiet again, but this time it felt different. Like a decision was waiting, not rushing me, but not going anywhere either. I made coffee and stood in the kitchen, holding the mug with both hands. And then, without overthinking it, I picked up my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. Hi, she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear that she hadn't been asleep. Hi, I said. Did I wake you? No, she answered. I was already up. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just careful. I'm glad you called, she said. I'm glad you answered, I replied. I took a breath. I wanted to apologize for the silence. I wasn't ignoring you. I know, she said. I figured you needed time. I did, I admitted. And I still respect what you told me. I just didn't want to react without thinking. I appreciate that, she said. I leaned against the counter, feeling oddly nervous, like this mattered more than the first date. I've been thinking about what you said, I continued. About your child. And about you not wanting to hide anything. She didn't interrupt. I don't want to pretend I have everything figured out, I said. I don't. But I also realized that the part of me that hesitated wasn't the part one want making decisions anymore. There was a quiet exhale on the other end of the line. What are you saying? She asked gently. I'm saying I'd like to see you again, I said. And this time, I'd like to do it properly. Not pretending your life is simpler than it is. She was silent for a moment, and I let her be. What does properly mean to you? She asked. It means honesty, I said. And it means I don't want to slowly ease into something that ignores a big part of who you are. If this continues, I don't want your child to be a separate topic we avoid. I could hear her breathing. Slower now. Are you sure? She asked. Not suspicious. Just careful in the way only a parent can be. I'm sure enough to take the next step, I said. And if that step feels like too much later, I promise I'll say it. Not disappear. She was quiet again. Then she said, that's all I ask. Honesty. I was thinking, I continued, maybe we could meet again. Somewhere relaxed. And if you feel comfortable, maybe I could meet your child. No pressure. No expectations. Just as people. Monica didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer. I don't introduce just anyone, she said. I wouldn't expect you to, I replied. And if now isn't the right time, I understand. Another pause. Then, actually, she said, I think this is the right way. Slow. Open. Real. I felt something in my chest loosen. There's a park near our place, she said. We usually go there on weekends. I'd like that, I said. Okay, she answered. Let's do that. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a while, phone still in my hand. I didn't feel brave. I felt calm. And that surprised me more than anything. At work that day, I noticed how my thoughts had shifted. I wasn't imagining worst-case scenarios anymore. I was thinking about practical things. How to be respectful. How to listen. How not to force anything. That evening, Monica texted me a simple message. Thank you for calling. I replied just as simply. Thank you for trusting me. Later, lying in bed, I thought back to the mall. To the moment she took my hand. At the time, it felt like a bold move. Now I understood it better. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't reckless. She was just choosing not to live in almosts. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I wanted to do the same. The morning of the meeting, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was anxious in the obvious sense, but because my mind was already running through small details. What to wear? What not to say? How to be present without trying too hard. I chose simple clothes. Nothing that looked like an effort. I reminded myself that this wasn't an audition. It was a meeting. Real people. A real situation. The park was quiet when I arrived. A few parents with strollers, someone jogging slowly, leaves moving in the light wind. I stood near the entrance and waited, hands in my jacket pockets, breathing more deliberately than I needed to. When Monica appeared, I recognized her immediately. She was walking beside a child, holding a small backpack in one hand. She looked at me first, gave a brief smile, then looked down at the child. This is Brian, she said. The child looked up at me with open curiosity. Not shy, not overly friendly, just attentive. Hi, I said, lowering myself slightly, so I wasn't towering. It's nice to meet you. There was a pause, the kind that matters. Hi, the child said. That was it. No dramatic moment. No instant bond. Just a beginning. We started walking together along the path. Monica didn't rush the conversation. She let it unfold naturally. She talked about school projects, about how weekends were usually spent. I listened, adding comments where it felt appropriate, not forcing myself into the space. At one point, the child pointed toward the playground. Can we go there later? They asked Monica. In a bit, she answered. Let's walk first. The way she spoke was calm, confident. Not strict, just clear. I noticed how carefully she watched me, not in a suspicious way, but in a protective one. She wasn't measuring me against some invisible standard. She was simply paying attention. We sat on a bench near a small pond. Ducks moved slowly across the water. The child picked up small stones and dropped them carefully at their feet. So, Monica said, turning slightly toward me, this is usually where we come when we need space. I like it, I said. It feels honest. She smiled faintly. That's a good word for it. The child looked at me again. Do you work a lot? I blinked, surprised, then smiled. Sometimes. But I try not to bring it home. They considered that, then nodded like it made sense. Do you like fixing things? They asked. I do, I said. Especially when something finally works after not working for a while. That seemed to interest them. They started asking questions about bridges, buildings, and whether I'd ever made a mistake that caused something to break. I answered honestly, including the parts where things didn't go right. Monica watched quietly. I could feel her relaxing, just a little. After a while, we walked toward the playground. I stayed back, letting them take the lead. I didn't try to insert myself. I didn't need to. At one point, the child came back toward the bench and sat next to me. Do you live alone? They asked. Yes, I said. For now. They nodded, then ran back to the swings. Monica exhaled slowly. You're doing fine, she said quietly. I'm not trying to do anything special, I replied. I just want to be real. That's more than enough, she said. We stayed there longer than planned. Time moved differently. Not faster, just lighter. When it was time to leave, the child waved at me. Bye, they said. Bye, I answered. It was nice meeting you. On the walk back to the cars, Monica stopped. Thank you, she said. For today. Thank you for trusting me, I replied. She looked at me closely, then nodded. I think this is the right pace, she said. I do too. As I drove home, I felt something settle in me. Not excitement. Not fear. Just clarity. For the first time, the idea of being part of something bigger than myself didn't feel heavy. It felt right. After that day in the park, nothing suddenly changed, and that was the most important part. We didn't rush to label anything. We didn't make promises we couldn't be sure about yet. We simply kept showing up. I started seeing Monica regularly. Sometimes just the two of us, sometimes all three. Evenings were quiet. Cooking simple dinners. Talking about work. Sitting on the couch after a long day, not filling the silence just to avoid it. I learned her routines, the way she planned her days carefully, always leaving room for her child first. I respected that without needing to be reminded. Over time, her child became more comfortable around me. Not attached, not dependent, just open. They talked to me about school, about things they liked and things they didn't. I listened. I didn't try to become someone important overnight. I let trust build the way it actually does in real life. One evening, after dinner, Monica and I stood in the kitchen while her child was in the next room. She leaned against the counter and looked at me for a long moment. You know, she said, I was prepared for you to walk away. I know, I answered. And if you had, she continued, I would have understood. But you didn't. I stayed because it felt honest, I said. Not easy, just honest. She nodded. That's why I trust you. A few months later, the routine felt natural. Not exciting in a dramatic way. Stable. Real. I found myself thinking less about whether I was ready and more about how present I was. Somewhere along the way, the fear I had felt in the beginning stopped leading my decisions. One night, after putting her child to bed, Monica sat next to me and took my hand. The same way she had in the mall. Calm. Certain. I don't need perfection, she said. I need someone who stays. I'm here, I said. And this time, there was no hesitation in my voice. We didn't make a big announcement. We didn't change everything overnight. We simply chose each other, again and again, in small ways. Over time, I moved closer. Not just in distance, but in life. We became a family not because we planned it, but because we lived it. Sometimes I think back to that day in the mall. Two people walking side by side, both afraid to speak. One moment of courage changed the direction of my life. Monica didn't wait. She didn't test me. She took my hand and made the first step. And I made the choice to stay.